announces it, he can't surprise us.
Yeah, no, he can surprise us with the actual intro.
You get the white
Yeah.
lady jump scare voice on Zoom.
I like how the white lady jump scare voice is also completely cognizant of two-party consent states, because there's just this blaring "this meeting is being recorded" thing atop my bar.
Mhm.
It's like, you're being recorded.
Which I believe our state's technically a one-party consent state.
Yep,
is.
Indiana is.
Don't tell nobody. They don't need to know
Don't
this.
tell nobody. Yeah.
This session will go against my permanent record, a thing that they scared you with in high school. Never again.
Look, man, I'm just saying, most of the things that we do in these games go against God and country, and that's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
speaking of permanent records, though. Hi, and welcome to Blank Bodies, a Vampire the Masquerade, V5 tabletop, horror, and werewolf podcast.
Who are you?
I am Hunter, and
Oh,
I'm your
yeah.
host. And this time I'm joined by...
This one's John over here.
Hello, this is Sarah, and we also have continued to have our special guest, Erik. Erik, say hello.
I can't believe I've been continually invited at least once more. I guess I left a good impression. Hi, I'm Erik, storyteller and events director with City of Glass Games. I am a BIPOC ace individual, and I'm gonna be tearing apart all three of these as we take them through a journey on Werewolf continuously.
Happy Pride, which will be over by the time this comes out, so it doesn't matter.
Oh no, we've time-stamped it. Oh no.
Sarah.
They don't know which Pride.
Sarah, you're not a corporation, though. You can keep being gay after this month.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, if you fuck with me too hard at any point in the year, it is still homophobic.
God damn it. That's all I had to say. By the way, I feel I should say at the top of this, because as I said, I am the events director. If you want to meet at least the majority of us at Gen Con, we are hosting several LARPs that are going on, as well as a live show that I've mischievously fooled these people into putting together. The LARPs will be the City of Glass Games multi-splat Boston Besiege LARP that is occurring on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. And the What We Do at the Beach Vampire the Masquerade Soul LARP, that'll be running the By Night Studios edition, second edition, on Thursday at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And on Friday is the Blank Bodies live podcast from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., if I recall correctly.
We're doing an hour of show and then an hour of Q&A.
We got a fun episode planned out, and we're also taking some listener horror stories as well as goodies.
Plane tickets are available, and they are only $6 each.
Hell yeah.
I've done my shill.
We'll be there.
We will be there. Bully Erik into being there too.
Yeah, you should be there, listener.
I thought you were pointing at me, because I'm like, no.
Erik, you
I'm
should
also
be
pointing at you. You're listening to my voice right now.
Everyone should come to our show so that we can tell Erik how good of a job he did with this werewolf game.
I will hide forever, I swear to God. I will hide. This man does not take compliments, ever. Anyway, with not taking compliments, if everyone is ready.
Yes.
As a recap for last session and as an intro to this session, my storytelling style with regard to this game is we do have a couple of small homebrew rules. Rage accumulation can still be done in combat as we do it, because in old World of Darkness scenarios, like, just because you're spending rage in a scene does not mean you're also regaining the rage, right? And as W5 has it laid out, is if you are spending rage in a scene, you can just like continue to spend until you're depleted. I think that's kind of lame, and I don't think you should necessarily have to kill everything. I think it should be more just fight and get fought. I forget there's another thing that I had on homebrew side, but that's okay. My table rules for the session, so everyone is aware, is everyone will get to do something cool. No table generals at the table, so again, everyone will get to do something cool, and it'll be in their voice. And I will, content and trigger warnings, I will never approach anything regarding sexual assault or other violations like that. We will be exploring body horror, depictions of violence, not necessarily against animals at all in this one. Potential loss of control of character if it gets to there. Past traumatic experiences depending upon how descriptive I get, and anything else that we come across. If you feel it is one, just give me a high sign and we will flag it as we go. Did I miss anything from last time? I think I'm good.
No, you're excellent.
Solid. Okay, with that, I'm ready to begin. In our last gathering. We explored the introductory shifting experiences of our 3 shifters. Poppy Doyle, our Gale Stalker, mycologist fan, who tore apart a bear once and answered the question truthfully of man or bear, and the answer was still bear. Our Ghost Council Theurge, Raka, as he finally came to grips and terms with a secret that was within his family, and specifically his old uncle Bob, if I recall, with our favorite fighty boy, Donnie, our Ragabash street urchin who found family in the bottom of a sewer after following a rat spirit for a couple seconds and running away from the cops. ACAB.
Hell yeah, brother.
It has now been several years since each of you first shifted. So, as shared, we went through each of our shifters' first change. To give you an idea, the listener, what that can look like as far as a narrow storytelling beat, as well as just exploring a little more in your character that often doesn't get stated, shared, or anything like that at a table normally. Honestly, it's a great character building thing, and you are able to get into the character's headspace a lot more easily. At least that's my philosophy. The 3 of you, as it has been several years since each of your first changes, all 3 of you coming from different, not necessarily parts of the world, but different communities within the Garber Nation itself, find yourself at a little bit of an odd junction, we'll say. The conflicts you would hear about in other regional areas, as foretold or shared by galliards that may pass through, nomadic sorts, through other members of your own tribe from different cairns. While maybe Donnie has experienced a little more living within like one of the boroughs of New York as compared to Poppy, who's a little more in the woods of Pennsylvania, there hasn't been this grand explosion of activity or massive conflict that's had to be addressed in a long while. And the Aruns of your respective packs and maybe the greater cairns have been on edge for a bit, unsure of what those next steps would be. However, the 3 of you are aware of a meeting which was held in the central Midwest United States about 2 years ago. It is not necessarily uncommon for the various tribes of the Garber Nation, at least for specific tribes, to meld and to mingle and to have grand moots with one another where they might have competition or share stories or go on grand investigations with one another into the Umbra or beyond. There was a different kind of gathering these 2 years ago. It was as called by the Gale Stalkers and the Ghost Council, Poppy and Raka's tribes, respectively, in which members were brought together to discuss something that was more often a quiet acknowledgement, let alone potentially a larger kept secret. Those of the Ghost Council know that they keep deeper umbral jails where they might host and hold beings that they can't contain on the Skinlands, yet can't quite exterminate completely, either because of the nature of the Bane, or the individual at hand puts up too much of a fight, or there's more value in keeping them alive. It can be any mix of things. But for Poppy in particular, among the Gale Stalkers, you would have heard legend at this point of the deeds of a specific Philodox, one who shares your auspice, by the name of Justice of the Frigid Hearth. A very stern, very compassionate, and just overall passionate individual. They have, over their 40 years of living, seen all manner of great execution, great despair, and great judgment within the nation. They've been called before to adjudicate differences between the Gale Stalkers as a whole, let alone some of the relationship that existed between the Ghost Council and the Gale Stalker, being that they are more of a elder brother and younger brother tribe situation. With great respect in that, they have found ways to build upon that relationship where the Gale Stalkers would behave as sort of bounty hunters, and the Ghost Council, as said, they're jailers. But at the event known as the Bane's Moot, a taboo was sort of broken. At the Bane's Moot, Justice of the Frigid Hearth brought forward his voice in exclaiming that whatever grand trouble that was making its way from the western and the wildernesses of North America, not just the United States, but the entire breadth of North America, were not just isolated events of randomness. They weren't events of cairn erasure by land development and exploitation. They weren't by leeches busting out of their cities and trying to deal with a quote unquote problem, nor were they by the likes of the Technocratic Union or advanced Monster X programs or anything like that within the world as it stands. No, this was something brought about by something that seemed to be organized by an intelligent, careful, and almost stalking organization put together. Now, there were rumors as to the name of this, but that name is hotly contested, and it's almost treated as a ghost story you dare not tell children unless you want them to learn a particular lesson. The type of don't go outside and play too late at night, don't venture too close to the cairns fires or the umbral mirrors that extend into the shadowy beyond. Listen to your parents, listen to your elders, they will guide you the right way. This entity, this being, the Whispers, speak of something called the Worm's Herald. Nothing, near nothing, is known of it, and we'll get into that a little bit later as we see what that tradition looks like and shapes. But it's not just the Worm's Herald. A single being could be dealt with by the Gara Nation almost instantaneously. Instead, it is far more structured. And the frightening thing of the structure is that the Black Spiral Dancers, which you would have heard of, all three of you, either in passing or in activity. In fact, Donnie, you may have had a run-in with one just within the city itself, though you may not have quite realized it because they embed themselves so heavily into society, whether it's the corporate foes that you may face that are trying to strip away what limited rights you have, or they may be funding police stations that are trying to sweep out the homeless issue, putting that in air quotes there. But they've never gone through such lengths of destruction. They've never been able to erase cairns practically off the map. And what's further frightening of that is the spirits that would normally surround cairns, benevolent and malevolent alike, have seemingly been silenced. The likes of small critter spirits have not been able to share their tales, and the Bane's moot, these concerns were brought forward. Now, for Raka, our theurge, you would have questioned your uncle about what has gone on at the Bane's moot. He would have at least brought you up to speed of an event happening, would have given you the title of what was occurring. What would you have asked him?
I think he would have asked as much as he could. I imagine the block there is my uncle seemed more, even amongst other guru, to kind of stick to himself. So when I showed up, he was like, it was more of a, I gotta deal with this shit again. Like, I guess I have to talk to people again kind of situation. So I imagine I would have gotten anything I could out of him in general, information wise. And so I think the limit there would mostly be either what he was willing to share or what he knew.
If you were to ask him two specific questions, what would they be?
I think the first most obvious question would be, does he know how they did it, and does he think it could be done successfully or repeatedly? Like, is this something that he thinks is a viable solution?
The solution being the Bane's moot, right?
Yes. And I read a little bit of what you sent us, so
You're 100% fine. Your uncle would have shared what breaths and whispers he would have received. As you said, the two of you, and honestly probably your pack as a whole in like-mindedness, exists more on the outside fringes of Garu society, where only those that are like not necessarily brave enough to cross those boundaries, but those who feel like you should know what's up to speed as a fellow Garu would have expressed exactly what the Bane's moot was. Not what it was for, but what it was. Whispers and tales would have traversed across the land from the central United States out into more of the East Coast as opposed to traversing back to the West. The Ghost Councils and the Gale Stalkers specifically, through Justice of the Frigid Hearth, who we'll refer to from here for as Frigid Hearth, launched a plan, this taboo I referred to earlier, to journey into the umbral depths of one of the great jails the Ghost Council constructed. Underneath the Six Grandfathers Mountain, which for those of you listening would be the modern day Mount Rushmore. The Ghost Council constructed deep, deep in the Umbra, a grand jail which hosted only the worst of the known Banes within the United States. Even in some stretches of Canada, as they would have been brought down. There was a particular Bane known as the Exiled Smile, which carried with it a weight, a rivalry of sorts, and a vindictive nature enough to stand against the likes of one of the oldest grand spirits known as Lion. For those of you who would know what that means, Lion used to be the patron spirit of a long extinct tribe. And when this was brought up at the Bane's Moot, the hush that fell, the raucous outcries of the insanity of the taboo that was being broken, including Frigid Heart's own voice among this doubt, this cast upon, this who should we even trust to do this objective? Who can we trust to carry this forward? Was broken by the sounds of heavy wrought iron chain. As each chain clanged, as was relayed to you and to Poppy, Elder Lupus, seemingly ancient in her own right, would creep forward, and without a single word shared, would gaze at Frigid Hearth. Frigid Hearth himself, in reverence, taking a knee in front of her. The eyes of this Lupus glowed, and even the umbral spirits that surrounded this grand moot seemingly bowed, knelt. The individual known as the Keeper of the Pack. She has no other name, only her grand deed name. And in a moment, Frigid Hearth had disappeared. For several nights, the other Garu gathered at this moot, in their own selfish conflicts, brought against each other, accused one another of some grand weakening of each other. The Gale Stalkers at the throats of some Ghost Council, the Ghost Council trying to understand and counsel the Gale Stalkers away from making some dumb decisions. Hell, the moot itself almost broke apart completely just from this dissension. These voices were brought to rest when several days later, Frigid Hearth returned with Keeper of the Packs. And Frigid Hearth himself, his normally rich onyx coat, even in all of his forms, was instead given a more ghostly white complexion, as alongside him was a grand spirit towering above other spirits, a saber-toothed tiger, the one known as Exiled Smile. The tale ends here. As said, it has been 2 years since that event. Again, all of you, the three of you, have not experienced any level of intensive conflict that would have brought itself out from this. Things have been kind of calm lately. Sure, you hear the reports of the city where the upticks in violence, the encroachments upon natural resources and the erosion of them, the small conflicts you may hear that exist between, say, the Silver Fangs and the Shadow Lords and everyone else, and the Red Talents and anything that looks even mildly human. All the normal, mundane politics of the Gara Nation still exist. But the three of you, as from the Ghost Council, the Gale Stalkers, and the Bone Gnawers, tribes which held their own sort of alliance to each other, have gathered in the deeper woods of upstate New York, within several or one of the major barrens and reserves that exists up there. Poppy, explain to me going to this moot, because you all know it's a grand moot. What would Poppy's reaction be to this, being relatively new to the Gara Nation? She's never been to a grand moot before. It's the etiquette's never been quite explained, aside of like kind of, if you're a Cleoth as you are, kind of stay in your lane, right? Let the elders do the talking, speak when spoken to, and only then, and even then, like, kind of keep it rather constrict, but to observe. What would Poppy's look, what would their attitude be, what would their sort of, I guess, perspective be on this?
Well, I'm getting to find a new thing, so that's exciting. So Poppy is very excited to go to a moot, because this sounds like it'll be cool, and there's going to be a lot of cool people doing stuff. Just very barely able to button the enthusiasm, even though everyone's like, you need to shut up, and she's like, I know, but like, everybody looks really cool and I want to ask a bunch of questions.
What is the likelihood that Poppy brings with her like a sketchbook or 7?
Yes.
So it's not just character-based enthusiasm. It is, as your name kind of suggests, you're literally kind of bubbling over. Just they kind of have to give you an individual wrangler basically in order to keep you intact, right?
Yeah, probably. Just, it's like, well, I can't have my phone, so I can't like scroll through social media things to keep myself busy. So I'm just desperately like excited to learn things, but I also need to shut up and like not bother people. But
And the way that your pack traverses, because you're coming from Pennsylvania, is they'll kind of get up to where the lakes are, and then they'll start to wrap up along the I don't know if we'll call it a coast, but like along that region, and then start heading east as they hit New York.
Mhm.
Your pack would have met up with several other smaller packs, maybe 3-4 individuals each. But it gives you the idea that this is like not just big for the sake of like, hey, cool thing. This is big, big. You've never seen this many Garu in one location before, let alone where you're headed to.
Nope.
And as you break into New York, within the lower southwest side of it, you find yourself breaking bread with a pack that is among the most infamous of Bane hunters in your region.
That's so fucking cool, though.
You're so cool. I want to meet him. I want to talk to him. You've been doing your best to stealthily sketch like the other individuals you come across, especially the Lupus, because they just everyone's look is just like so cool and so unique, right?
Yeah, it's Poppy still has that problem of seeing other people in Lupus form, and she's like, I want to pet them, but she's like, that's a person. I can't just pet people. That's weird.
But this pack, their name is known as the Bounty's End.
Mm.
If there's ever a problem in the Garu Nation that exists within your region, if it goes to them, it kind of gets resolved pretty quickly. So why are they being brought into a grand cairn when a grand move when they could easily solve a problem themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the forefront of this pack is a worm foe by the name of Bane Eater. You've never met her before, but she carries with her a different type of aura. Your theurges would look upon her and see that she carries some form of worm taint on her, but not in the sense of corruption, at least not an involuntary corruption. And in this first night that you all meet, you find, not necessarily you find, but there is a small conflict broken out, voices that get loud with each other. And Bane Eater makes her presence known, and with a simple whisper, as though the Northwind itself from the first night that you shifted, you can feel a chill just break over the air, and with it, the voices, the dissension, the egos and attitudes are broken. She is by all means and extents a girl boss. And it's not just with a single word that the Northwind seems to rest upon her breath and flow with it. It is with every word that she speaks, to a point that she's almost deliberately silent in most conflicts that go on unless they demand an immediate solution. But when all of your packs meet, they simply break bread, they have their gathering, maybe a minor tournament between the various R rooms of these packs. Everyone's selecting maybe a champion. You would have overheard some of the tales from the galliers that are gathered. You would have even possibly been a judgy bitch with a bunch of other philodoxes. Although maybe not you, because you like to see the best in people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Many other philodoxes are often very nihilistic, very, oh yeah, I just gotta deal with another thing, right?
Look, I enjoy tea and I enjoy things being messy, but it's also like, things don't have to be all bad. Because if they're all bad, then nothing is bad, and that's crazy.
As these packs meet, are there any questions that Poppy would have asked?
Yeah. Initially going on the trip was the initial just like, ooh, road trip, yes, I love going places, that's awesome. And then realizing the caliber of people that are at this meetup, at some point Poppy's just gonna be like, so why am I here? I don't look, I am an idiot in a petticoat. I don't think I should be here. Why? That would be the big one.
Okay.
And then the second one would be, things seem bad. It is gonna get, like, how bad are we thinking it's gonna get?
This is you asking me as a storyteller, or this is you asking me just in character as like
this is Poppy
as a ha thought. Gotcha.
It's Poppy trying to wrap cheese around the question of like, okay, I can put 2 and 2 together. This doesn't look good on a scale of 1 to we're fucked. Where are we sitting?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Your answers would not have gone answered. Sorry, your questions would not have gone answered. They would treat you very much as like a kid, right? By all means.
Mm-hmm.
Someone would have tried to start, and then there had been an icy look that was shot over to them. Don't say anything right now. And it's one of those like immediate, almost like looks from a grandparent at a family gathering where you've kind of said the thing you shouldn't have said, and you just get that look and you go, I'm gonna shut up now, and I'm just gonna go along with it, and we'll get there. Granted, by the time you meet up with the Bounty's End pack, you're pretty close to where you had to go already. But again, your question is, why are you here? And why does it seem so desperately serious if they have all these big names that are coming? Again, why are you here? And we'll get to that in a moment.
Yay! Yeah.
Donnie.
Yes.
Donnie, in your couple of years since going under your first shift, what would have been some things? What's your attitude? What is your general standing within your pack and that dynamic right now?
I would say he's probably still treated, kind of like little brother-esque. Like the little brother that you kind of want around, not the little brother that you have to keep around. He definitely is like, okay, these are my found family. And when he thinks my found family, he means like I'll stomp somebody's head in for them.
Nobody
Yeah.
fucks my family but me, right?
Exactly. I mean, yeah, frequently he gets in fights with his own pack, like not big, nasty ones, but like little scuffles because they're like, "Will you shut up?" And he's like, "No, I won't. You got to listen to me because I'm part of the pack too, right?" And then they're like, "We don't have to." And then he, talks with his fists, and yeah.
Donnie, your journey would have been the quickest among all the people here, among all the guards, because you're really just shooting over from Staten Island. Already, it's a shit show, right? Going on up to upstate, easiest time of the life, right? The city quickly gives way to woods. The woods give way to more woods. You're there probably a solid 3 days before anyone else is. And when your pack kind of leaves from the sewers, because easiest place to hide out and have a community, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, in Staten Island. When you break into upstate, the nature of the Bonars becomes like a less of a jovial and keep the fights within the family and just like solve all your disputes like with your fist. And you get your first like actual exposure to authority. Now, Donnie being a ragabash, of course, and being a street kid himself, what's authority to him, right? And you kept that idea pretty strong in your head until when you arrived at this reserves, there was one Garu who normally went around in his Hamid form, who sat to himself more often than not. He was an observer, or is an observer, carefully tasking each person that comes in, keeping a look at all the lupus that have come in, like he's maintaining an active inventory in his own head, a catalog. But you can also catch as he seems to be having arguments with himself. He's not entirely opposed to having others come up to him, strike a quick conversation, but you can kind of tell that he'd rather just not if there's no reason to it. But as you look to your other packmates, you ask who this individual is. And they kind of give you a sigh and a nod and one of like these of like just don't. If you don't have to, just don't. He doesn't like to mix with your kind type of deal, right? But you do ask a couple of others, and you get the name Whispers of the Barrow. You would have asked potentially how he got this name, and in fact, I'll ask you, Donnie. Arriving to the reserves, there were several other Ghost Council, we'll say, in this moment, but not a large enough gathering to amass the similar packs that you have and all the other bonars that were there. What would be your questions that you would ask?
I think the first question he'd be like, okay, yeah, it's not a long train ride, but like I don't want to have to make it all the time. Is why are we here? What's the gathering about? And then after it being exposed to, people who don't even try to talk to, much less with your fists. After being exposed to that, he would probably also have a similar question of like, okay, all right, if we're not even allowed to talk while we're here, why are we here?
So just your question to everyone, whether you can fight him or not, is the question of why am I here? You try to start some minor scratch probably with other Ragabash that are around, maybe a couple of Aru, and you're trying to set your own little fight pit. Maybe you're trying to get a couple of dollars in scratch on the side, right? You're placing bets. You're being the best possible little street urchin you can because it's the life you grew up in. And with each conflict that comes about, you yourself not being afraid to mix up. Before each fight, you kind of just reset your nose so it's fixed to what it was or like to a position you like it to be. But still, that question hangs over your head for the next couple of days of why are we here? And you don't get an answer for the next couple of days, as we will quickly pivot to Raka. Raka, your journey to these reserves is also not a very difficult one to make. You kind of just shoot straight west. There's not a whole lot going on. Rhode Island's a pretty small state, the smallest, in fact. And your journey with your pack is more rehearsing the things not to scream out loud about your stance with Luna, about how there isn't a disrespect between how you view the world and how your pack views the world versus how the rest of Gara view the relationship of Luna and Gaia. And yet still, as you traverse across as one of the Ghost Council, the pack sizes you note aren't significantly large. In your journey, you've only come across 2 other packs. Your own being about 3 Garu strong, the other 2 only being about 3 each as well. Not enough to mount any sort of defense should anything happen, but enough to be quick and nomadic to get out of there, right? And you would have quickly made yourself familiar with others, especially as you would have asked your uncle those questions while going forward of what he could have told you of the Banesmith, for instance, given it was so significant to your own tribe. And there would have been some reverie and tale. You would have gotten a little bit more clarification as to what may have gone on there in the smaller sense of between Garu to Garu, but not the overall objective. Except for one particular Garu, whose name is Ripples on the Moonlit Water. Very fitting for what you follow. They like to traverse around in their lupus form most often. And their coat is not incredibly dissimilar to yours. It is a rich golden, almost like a very scraggly retriever. Very big one too. And when shifting into Hamid form, he would love to share stories in the most playful way. His upbeat nature often getting him into trouble as he would say things that maybe he shouldn't have, but also clearly bullshitting his way through other parts of a story. And you would spend some time with him just collecting knowledge, maybe even sharing your own story of your first change with him to feel that sense of family. But he would have specifically told you, hey man, you know the thing that went down with our tribes? With us and the Gale Stalkers a while back?
Not nearly as well as I wish I did, but yes.
Well, do you want to know what happened with that?
I'm all ears.
So that guy, Frigid Hearth, right? He came back and he was all like cloaked with whatever he had going on. His fur kind of changed color, all that shit, right? Well, I heard from my uncle, who heard from their cousin, who heard from his sister, who supposedly, like, kind of through this weird family marriage thing, they were at the moon, that he didn't just come back with the spirit, but he made a personal pact with the exiled smile. And he kind of gives a whistle as like he's saying this all hush behind like, you know, a rock or something to keep it outside earshot of everyone else, and which is already nearly impossible because you're all Garu anyway, like you have your heightened senses. I heard that last year they carried out that plan. And you know, this grand gathering of the packs we're going to right now, I think we're about to find out what the hell happened there. Doesn't that make you just a little bit excited?
All the more excited. I've heard plenty of thoughts on what's happening and what happened, but we're definitely going to find something out.
Man, you ever you ever go online and like you just find like that random like tweet or maybe your uncle's Facebook post that like you shouldn't be looking at because it's really political and not in the right way? You ever get the sense that sometimes just there's a little bit of truth to it? Like a rumor that was born out of just a really, really bad retelling of Telephone? This guy, Ripples on the Moonlit Water, he's probably about 6 years older than you are. Like you're very much like a little brother to him right now, right? But you're also just a new face that he hasn't like had a chance to ruin his ego with, right? His personality is electric in a way that he can like draw you in just by talking to you, as a Galliard would, of course, right? Sharing a story, breaking down the charismatic barrier. It's all he's got to do. But he's hyper fixated on you in particular for some reason because you're about his age. And more importantly, you're not going to try to quiet him if he's going to say some shit.
Well, I mean, it seems like everything I've heard is hush, and no one quite wants to say exactly what they've heard or what they think happened, or there's got to be some truth somewhere.
Let me ask you something, Raka. You can keep this between us. Do you think that anything that we do is gonna mean the damn thing?
I mean, that's the goal, isn't it? That's what we all hope for.
I mean, yeah, I guess that's the goal. That's like the whole party line that the elders give us, right? But I mean, really, just think about it for a minute. We can meet all together in this spot, but does it really accomplish anything? I guess we could share some stories. We could have a fist fight or two. We could listen to the elders chatter on about how our generation doesn't know what's going on with what it was like when, I don't know, great grandpappy was fighting the Civil War and we were nearly at the end there because of vampires taking all that shit, right? It's always it's a continuing cycle. You can hear it in the stories that are shared. God knows I've heard enough. I wish there were an easy answer to what we could change, you know?
Well, hopefully we're about to get one. I mean, any information we can get, I'm all ears for. There's definitely something big going on, whether it happened, whether they succeeded, whether they're planning on doing it. I want to know, and I want to know how.
I like you, Raka. Instead of trying to silence it all away, instead of trying to hide behind that fear, you got a curiosity about you, right?
Of course.
I think we could tell a pretty good story from that. By the way, you're a theurge, right? You're kind of a spiritual sort, right?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Have you bound yourself to another spirit yet?
No.
Really? Man, you're just full of surprise. How long you been a Garu for?
Oh, almost 6 years now.
And you've never bound yourself with this. Ooh, why?
Uh,
And like as he asks that question, he kind of props himself up on a rock. He's kind of doing one of these with his hands, like just literally staring at you in like a very playful gesture, enraptured and encapsulated by just what you're sharing of just this. You're used to hearing about other theurges, maybe kind of getting with other spirits, finding them, striking those deals pretty early on, and you always kind of saw that and had a little bit of a jealousy about yourself, but you felt that it was always like this is above me, right? But he just Ripples just stares at you, just waiting for the next the reason why.
well, frankly, I haven't made up my mind. I feel like it's a big decision to make, and every story I hear from someone else, the more I learn, the better I can make that decision.
So you're just like waiting for the right one, or is it like one of those you go to a shelter and like you don't adopt the dog adopts you type of deal?
I suppose between the two, maybe the second, but I feel like I want to make an informed decision. Had so much handed to him very early on that like now he hasn't gone through a lot of the shit that everyone else has, but he's heard the horror stories, so he's equally like, I need to learn, knowledge is power, and also like these sound like things I should not do. These all seem, I've heard all the mistakes that everyone else has made. I got out of that first one top of the pile. Let's see how long I can stay ahead of this game.
And as you finish that statement, you hear from about 30, 40 feet back, Raka.
Do I recognize that voice?
Oh, it's your uncle's voice.
Oh, excuse me, and then I'll proceed that way.
Ripples kind of looks at you with a little bit of a sad expression that like this is where the storytelling, the story sharing ends for a minute as he shifts back down into his lupus and kind of dashes off into the night as another elder is calling their name. He's like, oh shit. It's like dashes off a little bit. And you head back towards your little encampment and your uncle's there. Where you been?
Well, I was talking to one of the Galliards, so I heard an interesting story.
Which Galliard?
Ripples.
He does one of these like exaggerated, takes his hand at the top of his head and kind of pulls and drags down just the expression of like, God damn it. Hey, listen, boy. Be careful what you say around that one. He doesn't have the best reputation. Known to be a bit more of a shit stirrer, you know? I'd be careful. It's not that I don't trust him, but I'd be careful. Got me?
Absolutely.
All right. Anyway, pack your shit up. We're heading out for the night. We're gonna finish this journey in the next about 3 hours. Okay.
Getting close then. Wow.
It's less that we're getting close, and more we just got word for a bit more urgency, and I'm not looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's an interesting sign.
So pack your shit. We're going.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he gives you a gesture like go. You know.
Yeah. He'll have that second like convert. Oh, and then go put your shit together. Knowing that once I get my stuff and we're moving, then talking can happen again.
Weirdly enough, because of how fast your combined packs are moving, there really isn't a chance to talk. It's kind of a forced march in a way where you are moving as fast as you can. And after about an hour, if anyone had a car, they would have parked it like far enough outside the Baron Reserves, and they would just like gathered some of the more essential items, maybe some personal effects, and they would just take off by foot. The moon hangs high in the sky on a half waxing look, as now the three tribes, the Bonars, the Gale Stalkers, and the Ghost Council, all convene upon a central campgrounds within the reserves. Walking in, despite this being a publicly accessible area. And for the sake of timeline, we'll say it's about mid-June, like it is right now. Oh no, we dated the time of the session again. It is warm, it is humid, it is sticky, even as the sun has crested now about 2 hours ago. And you can just feel the most annoying of the mosquitoes just biting everything, the gnats flying around everyone's head. But when each of you, with exception of Donnie, break into the central gathering where the grand mood is to be held, you're met with a raucous and blazing bonfire. a grand cairn effectively being set up. Each of you know that for such an occasion of a grand moot, which is usually very, very rare where it includes this many of the tribes in such numbers, you've effectively formed a stitched together set. All of the Gar present represent about 50 strong. 50. Your packs are normally only 4 to 6. Your local sets maybe 10 to 15, 50. The last any of your elders would have told you is that when there's a gathering even more than 25, that's usually kind of a war council, maybe a grand tournament if you're lucky, but a war council. And the 3 named Garu, Bane Eater, Ripples on the Water, and a little bit less so on Whispers of the Barrow, artwork, mingling, sharing pleasantries with others, especially Ripples on the Water, is just going up to everyone he can, trying to collect a story as best he can. He's trying to seek out every galliard possible to get whatever the next hottest and juiciest gossip is within the Garu Nation, which is not a whole lot, by the way, because you have to keep yourself secret. But Whispers on the Barrow in particular takes a stance where 4 rocks kind of pile upon each other where he can observe the events of what is going on. He's maybe only about 40, 50 feet out, but he's very isolated. And Bane Eater is quickly answering whatever challenge comes her way, as she, either in meager arm wrestling or in just regular wrestling, she is taking any and all challengers. She is a force unto herself. And with each combat and victory that occurs, another rising cheer before the next challenger steps forward. But the 3 of you will absolutely notice that even among these 3, there's a singular tent set up about 100, 200 feet away where the elders are convening. Each of your tribes is single actual elder that came, and the alphas that came with them. A total of 6, but they have not emerged for what feels like about 3-4 hours. The moon still hangs in the air, but the clouds do dance around it, occasionally smothering out the light. The brightness and the ferocity of the great cairn's fire still roars and licks and passes off its heat to all those that pass by.